Hi everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time, welcome. Today is part 2 of us talking about cops. Now, yesterday we talked about my experience with police, being an addict, being a convicted felon, going to prison, being in jail, work release, all that. A lot of opinion, obviously, and today's video is going to have my opinion in it too. Surprise, that's what I do here, but a lot of yesterday's video was about what I have seen being incarcerated, how police interacted with my friends, just fellow inmates, people that I wasn't that close to, how they interacted with me, how they interacted with my family while I was on the way to being sentenced to prison, the many times I've been arrested. So today is about how police are represented in movies, in TV, and how well that equates to my experience of police in reality. I was a little torn on this video because I could do like commentary over, TV shows. Like I could pull up Law and Order and whatever, like Reno 911 and all sorts of Hot Fuzz, all sorts of cop movies, cop shows. But I feel like the reason I'm able to make this movie is because we're all already aware of what police look like on TV. They're either the very gruff, stern, no-nonsense cop, usually with like the silly rookie buddy, or hi Eddie Murphy, or they're, crazy caricatures of cops. Reno 911, they're competing with firemen, like they're jealous of firemen. Firemen get all the babes. They look cool. They're always doing cool, heroic stuff. Meanwhile, cops are writing tickets. Like the tough cop, good cop dynamic. Like we all have seen cops in so many TV shows. Even the TV show Cops, which is a depiction of real police. There's so many shows right now, like Live PD, which is literally just following police around to, interesting arrests, interesting traffic stops, interesting calls that they're responding to see how police react in the field. And to be honest, my experience of those live television shows showing cops, they don't seem to be terribly scripted. Yeah, I think some lines were probably done twice. Some cops gussied themselves up a little bit better for camera than they normally would be just for their regular shift. But the police depicted on those shows are cops. I mean, I don't feel like I'm being lied to when I watch that. It matches up with my experience of police. So I think the part of how law enforcement interacts with their community that maybe not everybody knows about, it's not the stuff that occurs at, a regular traffic stop. Most of us have probably been pulled over and ticketed or given a warning or let go. The cop was having a good day or he just liked your face or whatever. You give him a little whoop, flash, whatever. And he or she let you go. What not everybody necessarily knows about is the stuff that happens once you fall into that category criminal or criminal's family. Once you stop being just the law-abiding citizen, and even at a traffic stop, I feel like there are times when the police officer is more stern than he or she needs to be. Like there's some weird power dynamic that they feel that they have to put forth. Like I know some of that sternness, that gruffness, that no nonsense-ness is to keep them safe, to get the response that they need from you as quickly as possible. They want your ID, they want your driver's license, they want your insurance, they want you to respond, blah blah blah, answer the questions. And they want to let you know that they're serious about what they're doing, that this isn't a joke, that in their eyes, from their perspective, their opinion, whatever, is that you've broken the law in some way, and they're handling it. So they don't want it to come across like it's a joke, like it's not a big deal. their job security is very much threatened by people thinking crime is not a big deal. So it's really their job to make sure you know that it is, that they're not cool with crime. So I want to talk about what you may see on TV after you've become a criminal, or if you're a criminal's family member, girlfriend, friend, son, well, I guess, kids or family, I guess, and what you might see on TV about that. My experience, having been arrested, is that as soon as they got me, as soon as they had that piece of whatever evidence on me, they no longer needed to be nice. They no longer felt the need to make me feel comfortable. Threats were thrown around, like you're gonna sit forever for this. You're in a lot of trouble. Like it's not, hey man, you better protect your butt. Crazy stuff. And their interactions with my family were similar. They weren't telling my mom to protect her butt, but they weren't altogether nice. I think a lot of times it felt like they were somehow blaming my parents for how I was. Like if you had raised him better, he wouldn't have become this way. And on TV, I feel like it's always assumed that cops are just like part of the community, that everyone's happy to see them, that the family who has a member of that family being arrested is like happy to see the cops. If it's a real depiction of police on television, like, yeah, if it's Reno 911 or again, something like that, like, yeah, the mom's probably wearing a tank top and she's drunk and she's firing at the police with a shotgun. But I don't think what's depicted accurately at all is how unhappy the family is to see the police, because my parents, my siblings all had a really good understanding, for the most part, not all of them did, and some of them still don't, but a really good understanding of why I was doing the stuff I was doing. And it wasn't because I loved money. It had almost nothing to do with money. The only concern I had for money was I needed it to get drugs. I didn't like to hurt people. Surely not. I consider myself a nice person, and I think most people do too. The reason I did the stuff that I did was to get drugs, and the reason I did drugs was because I was a drug addict. I had a mental illness that I was falling victim to. So when the police showed up and treated me like a criminal with a moral issue, my family was not happy to see them. But also, my family's hands were tied. Mine were tied literally. Theirs were tied figuratively. There was nothing they could do. If they had a warrant to come into my parents' house, my parents have to let them in. They have to let the cops in to come get their son from upstairs and take him to prison, a place where he's not going to get treatment for his illness, a place where he's not going to be taken care of. They're going to refuse him his medicine, and I don't mean his drugs. I mean his antidepressants, stuff that was prescribed to him from a doctor, somebody who's been handling his mental health forever, years, all of a sudden, all the work that they're putting into helping me get better, or in a different situation, all the work that a family's doing to all the time and love and work that they've invested in somebody feels like it's being thrown out the window. Because now the cops are taking over. We got it. We'll handle it from here. So this idea that cops and the community that they're serving, even if that community is, subjected to the police officer's authority, like the cops are welcome, that's just not true. And that's not necessarily the officer's fault, right? Like the fact that, again, I would go to jail or prison and be refused my medicine and be put in a position where I couldn't go to 12-step meetings and I couldn't go to therapy and all that. That's not necessarily the arresting officer's fault, right? Like they're not in charge of what happens at the prison I end up at. And it is their job to arrest me. Now, I've never been a big fan of I'm just following orders. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, you can follow orders to the destruction of the earth. It's like every Nazi said, I'm following orders. Like, the idea that you're just following orders. I don't think about what I'm doing. I just do it because I trust my boss. Like, that's a silly, it's a silly way to live your life. Not saying I shouldn't have been arrested, because I definitely should have been. I'm saying a lot because I'm not sure how I feel. I apologize. It's annoying. It's at least annoying to me. I don't think television and movies accurately and sufficiently portray the abrupt and seemingly otherworldly pain that an arrest causes to a group of people. It shocked, destroyed, crumbled, decimated, blah, 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 boom, my family. And I'm not the breadwinner or one of the breadwinners. I'm just the son. I'm just, the struggling son up in the room, but everybody loves him, I can't imagine if I had been, say it was my dad that got arrested, my dad or my mom. They both, financially help the entire family, even though most of us are independent now. To think that there are people being arrested and then there are just kids. There's just kids left. We're taking mom and dad, and the kids just like... The idea that you can arrest the person who committed the crime and that justice is being done is such a short-sighted, obtuse way of looking at justice. Because is your justice causing more damage than the original crime? I'll put it in perspective of the crime that I committed. When I robbed a pharmacy, I walked into a pharmacy, duh, and I handed a pharmacist a note, and it suggested that he give me these drugs or I was going to be upset. And it said no cops. And there was a death threat on it, I'll be honest. I didn't have a weapon. I wouldn't have hurt anybody. If he had said no, I would have left. That I know for sure, because I didn't have a plan B. There was no, well, I'll jump over this and beat you to death. It's not going to happen. If he had picked up the phone and immediately dialed 911, I would have run so quickly. And I'm not a quick runner. No doubt when I handed them that note that they were scared. They were nervous about what would happen to them if they didn't comply quickly or comply at all, and what would happen to the customers in the store. No question. No question. Now, when I went to court, I was read this, victim statement that the pharmacist wrote and then his wife wrote. The pharmacist was very brief, to be honest with you. He said, basically, what Mr. Haddad did was very wrong. I believe he should be punished to the utmost extent of the law. But I know that Mr. Haddad must have a mental illness. Therefore, I want him to also get the treatment that he needs. I was so grateful and so thankful to him for saying that. Because as much as he had been hurt and as much as he probably hated me, he couldn't look at me when I was in court. That's for sure. He still knew that I had a problem that I was addressing by committing this crime and that I needed help. It didn't mean I shouldn't be punished. That I should be punished did not negate the fact that I needed treatment and that no punishment was going to help if I didn't get that treatment. His wife just hated me, period. That was it. It's just, she was talking about how her husband can't sleep anymore. He's thinking about retiring early, all this. I don't know how much of that is true because my attorney had me say stuff that wasn't totally accurate, suggested I. And the prosecutor always coaches the witnesses to say this, that, and the other, to make it work. Because the better the prosecutor, meaning like the worse trouble that I get in, the worse sentence that I get, the better the prosecutor has done. The more damage he can cause on the person that's committed the crime, that's his goal. His or her goal is to get this person as much punishment as possible. That is the only thing the prosecutor cares about, because he or she is not judged by any other measure. That's it. It's not like, well, the person got off scot-free, but the prosecutor gave him a stern look. No, it's what sentence did the person get? And if they're ever trying to be a judge, they're going to be voted for. Were they tough on crime or not? What was my point? Jesus Christ Almighty. My point. My point was, I handed a person a note, and I took money in the form of medicine, drugs, from a large company. I should be punished for that, for sure. The monetary loss of the CVS was never addressed, so they're just out that money, or it's insured or whatever, But what happened as a result of me committing that crime, that serious crime, is that I did and am doing a 6-year sentence. Some of it was in prison, some of it was in work release, some of it was house arrest, and now it's probation. I was deprived of, you guys know what happens when you go to prison, but treatment, actual therapy. But forget about me, because I am the criminal. And I mean that. Forget about me in this situation. At least 20 other people had their hearts broken for 2 years straight, every day, because I was in prison. And it's not easy to get a quick, succinct grasp on what that means. How does that impact those people? How does it impact the people that those people know? How does it impact those people at work? So does it impact the economy? All that stuff. It's not easy to get a full picture of that quickly, written in black and white. It's just not. And so the justice system addresses things as though it were black and white, because it's so nearly impossible to get a full picture in gray. But I don't believe the punishment matched the crime. If I had had a gun or a knife or anything, then yeah, I do think it would have made more sense. Had I committed this crime in a different county where there is way more violence, I would have gotten probably a year of probation or 2 years of probation. But because I committed it in a county where violent crimes, aside from like domestic battery and like drunken bar fights once every 3 months happens, I basically was made an example of, because it wouldn't look, I was in the news. People knew who I was when I went to jail. I'm not saying I'm famous. I'm saying it's just, there's not that many crimes of this sort committed. So if elections came around, and it's not all just this, but if elections came around and it turned out that the person who robbed this pharmacy in this town that everybody knew about, that judge, that prosecutor didn't give me a lot of time, like really try to get me, it wouldn't have looked good for them. So going back to what this is about, and I can't just address the cops alone, because it's not just the police. Boink, now you're screwed. Like this whole idea of, there's way more black people in prison than white people. That's not just the cops. The whole country is talking about this, and I think that's good. I think we should talk about it. But the idea that it's just the cops doing a bad job is insane. It's not just the cops. It's the prosecutors. It's the judges. And more than that, more than it's the cops, it's the prosecutors and the judges. Because, yeah, the cops can be stereotyping and pointing people out and awful, violent when they don't need to be, and that's terrible. But when that person gets to jail and then goes to court, it could be the judge's job. It could be it is the judge's place to think critically about whether or not this person has been treated fairly, not just in their arrest, but their whole life, and if they should be another number in a jail cell. It's a complete failure. And 2/3 of that failure, if not 80%, is falls on the prosecutor and the judge's shoulders. So to defend the cops a little bit, I can't help it, what's not portrayed accurately in television, on the news, in Hollywood too, is that the cops are not the be-all, end-all of justice and injustice. Way too much is on these people's shoulders. They're asked to talk people off ledges when they're not trained. I talked about that yesterday. They shouldn't be there. But they have to be because nobody else is doing it. You don't call 811 and then a therapist shows up. They're the only ones. There's nobody else. It's America, but there's fucking nobody else to do it. What? They have to deal with violence. They have to deal with traffic. And then they get blamed when the prosecutors and the judges are not thinking judicially. There's so much falsehood in how the police are portrayed. And most of it is evidence against them, I'll say. Most of it is that's totally unclear what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most of what you see of the police, aside from the last couple years where we've seen, the police brutality, and it's really hopefully starting to be addressed now as it should be. Most of what you see in movies and stuff is that the cops are the good guys and the community welcomes them. And there's a few criminals, and these few criminals are the bad guys crawling around like spiders, and the cops are big booted heroes walking around stomping them. Okay. But that's not the case. The whole community is affected because those criminals are family members. And these cops following orders are hurting way more than just the criminal. Now, the criminal is hurting way more than just the victim. Okay? For sure. But it's not the criminal's job to think for the government. It's not the criminal's job to rob with justice in mind. The criminal, I'm going to say 98% of the time, is mentally ill, defective, not unfixable, but broken somewhere up here where it counts most. And it's the people in charge. It's the good guys who should respond similar to how when a child acts like a child, gets into trouble, and yells at the parent, and the parent shouldn't yell back like a kid. You respond like an adult. And the cops and the prosecutor and the judges should respond like adults. They shouldn't respond like another kid on the playground. Eye for an eye, tit for tat. You got me, so I'm going to get you twice as bad, because currently that's how it is. You got one over on us, criminal. We're society. You got one over on us, but now we're going to get you twice as bad. I handed a pharmacist a note. 6 years of my life went away, and my whole family has suffered. And I've lost friends and family because of it. And I mean it when I say, take me out of that picture. Because I think if you ignore what's happened to me as a result of the crime I committed, as a result of having a mental illness, I still think the punishment was too harsh. The pain that all these people, my friends and family, went through, are still going through, just taking that into account is too much. That's society saying, you got one over on us, but we're going to get you twice as bad. To sum it up, how are the police portrayed on television, whether it be news or something fictional? They're basically not. They're basically not portrayed. There are people in uniforms. There are people dressed like cops on the news, in TV, and it's so one-dimensional that it might as well, shouldn't even call them cops. You call them brooms, call them horses, call them clowns. It doesn't matter, because it's not an accurate depiction at all of what's happening. There is so much happening. that just isn't addressed because it's not easy to address. And so instead of standing up and, like being a first world country and like being the good guys, we're just like, well, that sounds like an awful lot of work. So why don't we just throw them in prison? Yeah. Okay, you too. You too. Yep, you too. And yep, you can go ahead and go. Oh, you're black. Go ahead. Yep. Okay. Oh, white. Well, our three white guys went in today. So no. Black guy? Yep. It's messy, and it's not as simple as I just made it sound. But yeah, it's screwy. It really is. And I did not do a good job keeping on topic. But I'm happy saying what I said. Happy that I said what I said. You guys take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Bye.